Hey guys, I'm Tasha from Travel and Tash. This is part 2 in a series where I'm talking about challenges for expats living abroad. And this particular episode is talking about the obsession with beauty here in South Korea, particularly in Seoul. I happen to live in Gangnam, which is rampant really for obsession with beauty, and neighbouring Apgujeong. I'm going to delve right into the video. If you want to go back and see my previous part 1 episode, go back and do that so you understand a little bit why I'm interested in this particular topic. But I'm going to delve right into this, and that is, for females, the obsession with beauty here. There's an obsession with youth. There's an obsession with looking young, and here you see older ladies wearing, it's quite typical to see women with a visor, like a visor that looks like a mini umbrella covering the face, to shade them from the sun to make sure that they don't tan, which will then age them. And this obsession with whiteness, it's interesting. I had a friend, or I have a friend, who mentioned that his wife, who has a little bit of, her skin is kind of normal Korean, colour, where it's a little bit brownish, and she finds it hard to find a foundation colour that matches her skin, because a lot of people try to use colours that actually are a shade lighter than their genuine skin tone. And even for myself here, coming from British Spanish heritage, I find that I end up even wearing foundation that is a shade lighter than my natural skin tone. My neck is actually slightly darker than my face when I put my foundation on. And not only that, an obsession also with Western features. So let's talk about noses and things like that. So I remember when I first came here, one of the interesting conversations I had was about, and this with Korean friends, is this idea that a higher Western style nose is desired. So a lot of Koreans here will get plastic surgery done to make their nose look larger, like a Western nose. There's a specific, very particular style of a nose that is preferred, in fact, which I think I'd describe a little bit as a Peter Pan type nose style, shape of a Peter Pan. And it's quite normal for people to come here and get plastic surgery where, the eyelids are operated to have a crease inserted, which is supposed to make your eyes look bigger. This obsession with big eyes, doe-like eyes, which is associated with Western eyes. This idea that Westerners are attractive because they don't have flat faces, but rather they have eyes that kind of indent into their skull. I hadn't even thought of that until a Korean friend was actually mentioning this to me, and I was like, really? I actually hadn't even thought about the fact that apparently some Korean people think that they have a flatter shaped skull. Their features are not set so deeply into their face. Their noses are flatter. Their eyes are more on the surface of the edge of their face, rather than being deeper set into the skull, into the recess of your skull, like a Western person. Additionally, things like, let's say, makeup and skincare. One of the things that I really liked when I first moved here was the fact that there is such a selection of skincare and makeup. There are so many competing brands, so many to choose from, and a lot of them have great ingredients, and they're all competing with brands that come from France, your Clarins and your all of these Estee Lauder and things that you find in a typical department store. But Koreans, in addition, have also produced a lot of these products too, or similar products, and some of them are really, really good quality, and they can give you really great skin. But the thing is that this is just another dimension which just shows the obsession here with perfection and with beauty. Also, I was watching a documentary a while back, and it was on Colombia, and they happened to mention that, interestingly enough, although Colombia is the #1 place in the world for plastic surgery on your body, is actually South Korea, particularly Seoul. That's the #1 market and place in the world to find plastic surgery doctors to operate on your face. I live in Gangnam, and I see posters everywhere. You know, I've lived here for 2 years, and things like whitening your teeth. You know, I'm not saying that these are there's a mosquito here, that these are exclusive to Korea, or to Seoul in particular, or to the Gangnam neighborhood. But what I'm saying is that the posters that you see when you're in Gangnam Station or Apgujeong, they are everywhere. These ideas about, you know, how, you know, if you have a shaved jawline, to make sure that you have, you know, that you don't have a square-shaped face, but that you have a very oval or heart-shaped face. Make sure that you don't have, if you're female, that you don't have an angular jaw, you know, that you have that higher nose, and that you have those big doe-like eyes. It's interesting how much importance is placed on that. And to compound that, it's interesting that on resumes here, it's really quite normal to have to see a resume that has a photo of the person on it, which, you know, to my understanding, in some countries, I think in North America, that's absolutely illegal. You can't choose somebody based on their appearance, you know, to be an employee in your company. Here, not only is that standard, particularly for when you're applying for a job, but these things are also accepted for passports. So, you know, people want to look their best, and oftentimes the person that they're going to that takes the photograph in the photo studio typically will Photoshop it. And I recall that when I was getting my Canadian passport photo done here at the Canadian Embassy, I went to a photo studio, and the guy straight away was already, you know, he was already applying Photoshop to my photo, and I had to say to him, look, you know, can you not Photoshop my photo, because in Canada actually you can't Photoshop your image for your passport. And you know, he was like, oh, well, let me just do this and let me just do this, and you know, I almost had to like drag him away from my photo to just leave it as is. But that's how common, how prevalent it is here. So anyway, another thing I want to mention is thinness. It's funny because I'm already, like, I'm a size extra small to a small. And generally speaking, in Europe, you know, I'm really on the petite side. But one thing that really surprised me when I moved to Seoul and to Korea in general was that here, I'm actually almost standard. I'm almost normal. Like most people here, most women are actually a very similar size to me. Most women are a size small or even an extra small. And I know that I'm generalizing a little bit here, but it's, you know, it's actually fairly accurate. Like, there are a lot of slim women here, and I was delighted because I was just like, oh, you know, I can go to shops, I can go, you know, I can buy, you know, I have lots of selection in terms of what I can buy, because sometimes when I was in Canada, I couldn't actually find some things in my size because I'm really petite, I'm really slim. And so discovering that here was wonderful. But of course I heard, you know, from lots of expat friends, oh my goodness, you know, I can't find any clothes here, you know, I have to go back home to actually purchase clothes back home because, you know, I'm too big for, you know, the sizes out here. So that was a really, you know, really curious fact. And the other day I was speaking with one of my students, and she was saying that sometimes her mum will go through the whole day and she just won't eat any food, and she'll eat in the evening or something like that. And you know, and it's not the first time I've heard that of women, you know, just not eating in this effort to stay thin. I have another friend, and she was saying, you know, something similar, that she wanted to skip a meal, or that she was going to skip lunch because she wanted to stay thin, or she was going to skip dinner or whatever. And it's just, you know, this obsession with being skinny. It's crazy, and it's funny because I've also met expats here that say, you know, you know, expat men that say, hey, you know, I really want to date a Korean woman because they are actually thin, unlike a lot of women, you know, from our culture back home. You know, these were North American fellas that I was speaking to, and I was just like, oh goodness, you know, you're specifically targeting a particular culture because they're skinnier than the ladies in your culture. These fellas were American, I recall, and this happened about 2 years ago when I met them. Anyway, last but not least, something I want to point out that was kind of interesting. I went on what was a language exchange event about maybe 2 years ago, 2 years and 2 months ago. And it was with a fella that was a lawyer from Gangnam. And it's funny because it ended up turning into a date, which was interesting. And it's funny because at one point I took off my glasses, and then he said to me, "Oh," he was like, "You're actually really pretty." And I was just like, he said to me, "Oh, you know, you're not much prettier without your glasses on." And I thought to myself, really, does glasses really make such a big difference to somebody's appearance? Because, you know, in my opinion, and I guess perhaps within my culture, you know, from, you know, a British European perspective, is that really whether you have spectacles on or not doesn't make you attractive or unattractive. You know, and I just found that really, really curious. And, you know, I have noticed that a lot of Korean people here are short-sighted. It tends to be, from what I can tell, almost a genetic predisposition. A lot of Koreans need to wear glasses, and I've met so many that wear contact lenses. It's definitely more prevalent, let's say, situation than you see in Europe. But this, you know, this idea of, you know, wearing contact lenses so that you can appear more attractive on a regular basis, like, you know, I just, you know, I've had it suggested to me, you know, why don't you wear contact lenses and this and that, and I'm like, no, you know, I don't need to be perfect in the perspective, you know, from the perspective of, you know, I guess people that accept particular standards of beauty, or these rules of beauty that have been prescribed by somebody that I don't really agree with, you know. And anyway, I found that really, really curious. So anyway, I hope you have enjoyed the content in this video. And, you know, if you haven't seen part 1, go back and watch it. I got some really interesting insights from the fellas, some Korean fellas that I've met out here, and all that. But this problem really, you know, this striving for physical perfection is not something that affects just female Koreans, but it's also very prevalent in particularly the younger male generation here at the moment. You know, and compounded by things like, you know, the posters that you see in subways, you know, the perfect role models that you see in, you know, the Korean dramas, the soap operas, the K-pop bands, you know, everybody with perfect skin, and, you know, everybody with, you know, seemingly perfect figures and perfect lives and smiles, and, you know, this facade of perfection, I think, is a really... it's a really interesting topic here, and I think that there's a lot more to this topic that I have not even come close to talking about here. But it's a kind of cool thing to be aware of before visiting. And anyway, I hope this gives you some food for thought. You know, if you'd like to see some of the articles I've written on this topic, I've written about Korean, let's say, light cosmetic surgery with traditional doctors. They're called Haniwons here, And so I'll link that in below in my article, and also another article I wrote about laser hair removal here with clinics in the Gangnam area. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Hit the bell button to subscribe if you like my content. Thank you so much. Take care. Bye.